In Mexico, people say that homeland begins here, but here something else also ends or begins. Sometimes a dream, sometimes reality, and that is especially true for migrants.
Frappuccino.
A caramel frap?
A caramel frappuccino.
Please.
Okay.
Thank you.
No worries. A caramel frappuccino.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Just beneath the highway outside Tijuana, a ribbon of cardboard shacks brightens with the dawn, forming a settlement erased from every official map. Right next door, a colossal e-commerce warehouse pierces the skyline, while deported women must choose daily between contaminated water and the lurking darkness. Number 1. The Deportee Slums of Tijuana. They call it Cartolandia, the city of cardboard, and its origins date back to the early 1950s. Deep inside Matadero Canyon near the city of Tijuana, the first wave of makeshift shelters took shape, built by deported workers who had no home to return to. Many had labored for years in the United States under the Bracero program, only to be expelled and left at the border with nothing but their hands. At the same time, Mexico was reeling from economic instability. The peso was rapidly losing value, and newly established maquiladora factories were springing up along the border zone, drawing low-wage workers from across the country. Those who arrived with hopes of factory jobs often ended up stranded, especially when deportation from the United States came without notice paperwork or support. Over time, Matadero Canyon became a default home for the displaced. By the early 1970s, Cartolandia had grown into a large informal settlement, dense, improvised, and largely ignored by authorities. Then came the year 1973, when the Mexican military launched a massive clearance operation. It was the largest forced eviction in the canyon's history. And for many, it marked the end of any belief that the state would offer protection. Still, the settlement returned because those who have nowhere else to go will always return to the only land they know. In more recent years, even as the physical threats remain, a new challenge has emerged in the form of administrative policy. In addition, changes in U.S. asylum law and bilateral migration agreements have made it significantly harder for migrants to apply for legal refuge. Under tightened regulations, fewer claims are accepted. Wait times have stretched into years, and many people are rejected before they ever see a courtroom. For thousands left in limbo, Matadero Canyon has become both a holding zone and an unintended final stop. According to a study from March 2025 by the Migration Policy Institute and El Colegio de la Frontera Norte, nearly 60% of those living in the canyon have no access to formal housing. Roughly 1 in 3 have been removed and shall returned to the same spot more than once. This is not simply a story of poverty. It is the outcome of policy geography and time stacked against people who keep surviving anyway. Number 2. Portrait of a Deported Woman. In the chaos of deportation, it's not always the journey that breaks a person. It's the moment they realize they've been erased from their own life. For women like Hernandez, deportation is not just an end to a chapter. A mother forced to live apart from her children, a wife separated from her husband, and a citizen erased from her homeland. Many carry the weight of caring for children who were born and raised in the United States. Others struggle with paperwork, border restrictions, or the risks that come with attempting to cross back. Some, like Hernandez, have spent most of their adult lives north of the border. When they're removed, they are dropped into a country they no longer know and separated from the people they love most. Hernandez is 45 years old. She lived undocumented in Southern California for over 25 years. All 5 of her children from age 3 to 23 were born in the U.S. When immigration officers deported her to Tijuana, she was given no chance to say goodbye. Just minutes before being escorted out, she was told she would be banned from entering the United States for 10 years. Her partner, the father of her youngest daughter, remains undocumented in California and cannot cross. Her daughter, who shares a different last name than her older siblings, is too young to understand. She keeps crying, Hernandez says. She wants to know when I'm coming home. I don't know what to tell her anymore. Panic and silence fill the spaces between her thoughts. She checks her phone over and over again, waiting for messages from her children, trying to imagine a plan. I could try to work here and send money home, she says. Or maybe cross again, even if it's dangerous. But what if I'm detained? What if I'm hurt? In a moment, she lost her family, her home, and her future. And she is far from alone. Thousands of women across the border wake up every day asking the same question she does. What now? Number 3. The fight for clean water. In most places, drinking water is something you do without thinking. It is routine, safe, and available at the turn of a tap. But in Tijuana, especially in the hills just behind the city, finding water is not the problem. The real question is whether you would dare to drink it. And if you would not, then the only thing left to do is wait for help from someone else. In the unregulated settlements outside Tijuana, water flows through plastic hoses and open trenches, often exposed to sewage and chemical runoff. Entire families rely on water that is visibly murky, smells of rust or chlorine, and sometimes carries bacteria that cannot be seen, but quickly makes itself known. A public health study from the year 2022 revealed a disturbing reality. In some areas, the concentration of E. coli in drinking water exceeded international health limits by more than 40,000 times. These are not remote villages, but neighborhoods only a short drive from the United States border, where water fountains in schools run cold and clean every day. Nonprofit organizations have stepped in where governments have not. One group, Provide Water for Life, has distributed over 500 filtration kits across Tijuana's most vulnerable zones. Each filter turns contaminated water into something safe enough to drink, cook with, or give to a baby. Volunteers from Spectrum visit 7 hillside communities every month. They do not only bring filters, but also guidance on hygiene, nutrition, and how water affects every part of a child's development. For many families, these visits are the only consistent source of health information and clean supplies. The impact of clean water reaches far beyond the body. Without it, children fall behind in school. Mothers miss work. Families spend what little they have on medicine that cannot keep up with the next infection. But with clean water, even small changes feel powerful. A child's appetite returns. A mother sleeps without fear. And for once, people begin to hope, not just for survival, but for a life they can plan for. In Tijuana, water is not only about thirst, it is about dignity. Number 4. Danger from violence. In Tijuana, danger is not always visible, but it is always present, especially for women. The city recorded its deadliest year in 2017, with over 1,600 homicides linked largely to fractured drug markets and territorial disputes among rival groups. As violence escalated, the most vulnerable became even more exposed, particularly migrants, women, and LGBTQ individuals who had no protection and nowhere safe to go. Many of them arrived during a period when immigration policy in the United States shifted dramatically. Under the Trump administration, changes to asylum law narrowed the grounds under which individuals could seek protection. Survivors of domestic violence or gang-related threats found their claims increasingly denied. For thousands, this meant being returned to countries already struggling with instability. Institutional failure and widespread gender-based violence. Maria came from Guerrero, a Mexican state where organized crime controls entire regions. She had never learned to read or write. For most of her life, she worked as a domestic cleaner. For nearly half that time, she lived under the control of a violent partner. When the threats escalated and local police refused to intervene, she boarded a bus heading north. Because she is Mexican, Maria is not eligible for refugee resettlement. Technically, she is allowed to work. In reality, she faces enormous obstacles. Her lack of literacy, her age, her fear of violence in public spaces, and the absence of a fixed address all make legal employment difficult, if not impossible. Maria's case is not rare. She represents thousands of internally displaced women across Mexico who were forced to move not by choice, but by the absence of protection. The institutions that failed them once continue to exclude them from opportunities to rebuild. In neighborhoods along the border, many of these women live hidden lives. They do not appear in statistics. They rarely speak to reporters. But their silence is not safe. It is the result of exhaustion, isolation, and fear. Fear that what they fled is still following close behind. Number 5. Cortando el Patriarcado Project. But even the cracks can be where the light begins to enter. In a shelter on the outskirts of Tijuana, a small group of migrant women gather around a circle-light candles and begin their day in a space intentionally designed for healing. For many of them, it is the first time they have been in a room where they are not expected to be silent. The project is called Cortando el Patriarcado, or Cutting the Patriarchy. Founded in the year 2024 by artist and activist Gaba Cortez and coordinated by the American Friends Service Committee. The initiative provides haircutting training for migrant women while also creating a structured space to confront gender violence and reclaim autonomy. Each participant receives a professional haircutting kit, including scissors, razors, and combs. Over the course of 5 weeks, they learn basic styling techniques while also engaging in group conversations about identity, survival, and rights. Many of the women have fled domestic violence, gang threats, or institutional neglect, and the act of learning a trade becomes a bridge toward both income and self-worth. Sessions are held in a shelter that houses displaced women from across Mexico and Central America. Classes begin with a quiet ritual, a circle candlelight, and the burning of sage. According to organizers, this small act marks a transition from survival mode to a space where vulnerability becomes possible. Now in its 2nd year, the program has expanded to include the children of participants. In the year 2025, dozens of children between the ages of 10 and 17 joined a creative workshop titled Cinema, Childhood and Migration. Through basic lessons in theater photography and storytelling, they learned how to document their lives and share their perspectives with others. The workshop concluded with a public photo exhibit inside the shelter. Children displayed their own images, snapshots of everyday moments, fears, and fragments of hope. Residents, neighbors, and staff gathered to view the work. This allows the children to show what they see, not what others assume, said one of the workshop facilitators. It was personal. It was full of fire. In a city where many systems have failed to protect migrant women and their families, Cortando el Patriarcado has become more than a training course. It is a reminder that empowerment can begin in the smallest of spaces, and that even a pair of scissors can become a tool for change. Number 6. Amazon near the slums. In September 2021, images of a newly built Amazon warehouse towering over a slum in Tijuana sparked a global conversation about the role of multinational corporations in deepening global inequality. The sleek, imposing structure of Amazon's warehouse, rising above the informal settlement of Nueva Esperanza, quickly captured attention. For many, this image highlighted the stark contrast between the company's immense profits and the dire conditions faced by the people who live and work in its shadow. While Amazon has never clearly defined what it means by corporate responsibility, local residents had hoped that the company would do more than simply fill its warehouse with low-wage workers. In the years since Amazon established its presence in Tijuana, the company's most tangible contributions have been limited. The company has provided some school supplies and organized reading workshops for local children. But this is small in comparison to the approximately $3.5 billion Amazon Mexico generates annually. These contributions, though appreciated, seem insignificant when juxtaposed with the size of Amazon's operations and profits. The neighborhood surrounding the warehouse still lacks basic infrastructure. There are no paved roads, no working sewage systems, and homes are constructed from recycled plywood and other salvaged materials. These are the same basic services that residents have been requesting from the Tijuana city government for decades, but which have yet to be addressed. The presence of one of the wealthiest companies in the world in such a context underscores the gap between corporate prosperity and the needs of local communities. Teddy Cruz, director of urban research at the Global Justice Center at UC San Diego, expressed his astonishment at the stark contrast. The image of Amazon's warehouse next to this informal settlement is striking and really illustrates many of the issues our research is focused on, particularly the entrenched inequality that continues to shape urban development, Cruz said. For Cruz, the photo symbolized more than just a physical disparity. It represented the ongoing systemic issues of wealth concentration, economic exclusion, and the failure of institutions to support the most vulnerable. As Amazon continues to expand globally, the question of corporate responsibility grows more urgent. Will corporations like Amazon use their influence and profits to address the inequalities they help perpetuate? Or will they continue to profit from the labor of marginalized communities without investing in their long-term welfare? In Tijuana, the hope remains that Amazon and other multinational corporations will begin to contribute more than just jobs. They will become part of the solution, improving the neighborhoods they inhabit and the lives of those who sustain their operations. Number 7. The lie about deportation. Deporting only the bad people. That's a lie. Father Pat Murphy, the director of a refugee shelter in Tijuana, describes the experience of deportation as a profound emotional loss. First, it's denial, then a sense that life is over, he says. We try to help people rebuild their lives here, but for some, it feels like a life sentence. He highlights the trauma that deportation causes, not just for the individuals directly affected, but for their families, especially the children left behind in the U.S. Father Murphy's words reflect the devastating reality of U.S. immigration policy. While the government claims to target only criminals, it is the most vulnerable, those with serious health conditions, the elderly, and those without any resources who are most often caught in the net. We're seeing people with cancer, mental illnesses, and the elderly all being sent back to Mexico, a place where they have no family, no support systems, and no means to survive. Father Murphy explains, "Many will never be able to find work here. How is that helping anyone?" The community of Tijuana, already burdened with high levels of poverty and instability, is now tasked with caring for those abandoned by the very system that should have protected them. If you don't have papers, the U.S. government doesn't care. They're not just deporting criminals, they're sending back people who need help the most. Father Murphy says, "These are individuals who have spent years contributing to the economy, raising families, and becoming integral parts of their communities, only to be discarded like disposable items when they are no longer needed." Father Murphy warns that this crisis will only deepen. Soon they'll start clearing out the prisons, and then we'll see mass deportations. It's the most vulnerable who will bear the brunt of these policies. In Tijuana, many of these deported individuals face a harsh reality. Stripped of their homes, families, and livelihoods, they must start from scratch with no support and little hope for a better future. As the U.S. continues its aggressive immigration policies, Tijuana is left to shoulder the burden of its decisions. Families are torn apart, and entire communities are left to pick up the pieces. Father Murphy believes that these policies are not just cruel, they are short-sighted. It's a system that profits from the labor of immigrants, but refuses to take responsibility for their well-being when they fall through the cracks, he says. This isn't just about immigration, it's about human dignity. Number 8. Rich-poor border. What creates the brutal divide between rich and poor just meters apart? In Tijuana, the answer is simple. It is not the rain, but the poverty that kills. The slums here are products of economic pressure, human desperation, and government indifference. On one side of the border, luxurious homes and shopping malls rise above the ocean where the wealthy live in air-conditioned comfort, insulated from the struggles of those just a few meters away. On the other side, the slums present a stark contrast. People in these areas fight daily to keep their homes intact during storms that flood their streets and destroy the makeshift roofs they rely on. These neighborhoods, built from recycled materials and fragile construction, are not the result of natural disasters, but the direct consequence of economic forces. The poorest are pushed into these areas by the failure of the systems meant to protect them. Lack of jobs policies that criminalize their existence and the inaction of both governments on either side of the border all contribute to the situation. The people who live in these slums were not born into poverty, they were forced into it. Generations have lived on the margins, enduring harsh conditions like the absence of clean water, proper sanitation, and reliable electricity. However, in the wealthier areas, the struggles of the poor go unseen. The wealthy never witness the daily hardships, the mothers carrying water from distant taps, or the fathers piecing together walls with scraps of wood. Meanwhile, the promise of a better life remains just out of reach. In a city where the gap between luxury and destitution can be measured in mere steps, the question remains: will those in power continue to look away, or will they finally recognize the human cost of this divide? The answer will determine if the slums of Tijuana remain products of indifference, or if change is possible in the face of such stark inequality. In a world where the divide between the privileged and the marginalized grows wider with each passing day, what will it take for us to bridge the gap? How long can we ignore the communities that have been left behind, discarded by a system designed to benefit the few? The people of Tijuana and countless others around the world are not asking for charity. They are demanding the chance to live with dignity, to work to provide for their families, and to contribute to society. If this story has made you think, if you feel moved by the voices of those left behind, don't stay silent. Join us in sharing their stories, raising awareness, and taking action. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to stay connected with NVL Travel Documentary, where real stories meet real change.